Good morning. Okay, so before Shavuos, we were talking about lots of plague-related topics, and we ended off with a interesting tshuva from the Ramah that I wanted to revisit a little bit and discuss the shaila of running from plagues or staying put. It's really like a hashkafa shaila, meaning how do you look at something that potentially has the ability to kill you? Is it like open season? The plague can kill anybody that it wants, or is every bullet has a name, and it doesn't matter where you are. You could run, you could stay, you could go. Every bullet has a name. Now I'll open with this. I always heard a funny story. The Pnei Menachem, when he was the Ger Rosh Shiva, actually I don't know if he was Rebbe or he was Ger Rosh Shiva then. He gave a shmooze to the Bachram during one of the wars. I think during the Iraq war, like with the Scud missiles, in maybe the early 90s. Rosh Shiva still? And he gave them a drasha and he told them that, you don't have to be afraid. Every bullet has a name. Stay put. Just sit and learn. Do what you're supposed to. Nothing bad is going to happen if it's not supposed to happen to you. And he gave them a whole shmooze. The next night he heard that there was a bunch of Bachram on the roof of Yeshiva. They were watching the missiles fly in. Back then it wasn't interceptions. They were just watching the missiles fly in. And he was furious. He called the Bachram in. He gave them the whole shmooze. Haytach, and you're putting yourself in sakana, you're going on the roof, and you're thing. So one bacher who had a little bit of chutzpah asked him, Rashiva Chashtenish, yesterday you told us every bullet has a name on it, and now you're telling us that we can't be on the roof because it's dangerous. Which one is it? So the Pnei Menachem looked at them and he told them, every bullet has a name, but some of the bullets it says l'chol man debay. Anybody who wants this one can get it. You don't want to catch one of the l'chol man debay bullets. So it's this need in what's are you supposed to run? You're not supposed to. It's this need, and it's really a tifa ashkafa shayla is really what it is. Now, I want to start with a little bit of a tragic historical tidbit, and with that, we'll open up the shayla. One of probably the most consequential pre-war Rav, meaning the one who ran the most, accomplished the most, was probably Rav Chaim Ozer. In the Litvish world, I'm talking about. Rav Chaim Ozer was extremely, extremely consequential doer. He's one of the founders of the Aguda. He's the Vada Yeshivas. He helped save the Yeshivas during World War II, during World War One. He was a very, very big askin besides being a Rav. And he was the Rav of Vilna, which was the Irvei Yisrael Yerushalayim Delit it was called. And Rav Chaim Ozer wrote a few svarim. Rav Chaim Ozer, was a famous guy and a big Eloi. Rav Chaim Ozer goes without saying. Everybody knows who Rav Chaim Ozer is. Now, what's fascinating about Rav Chaim Ozer is that he was not even the Rav of his own city. As a lot of places under the Russian government at that time, there was something called the Rav Mitam, where you had to have a government Rav who could speak Russian, who could write Russian, who could correspond with the authorities, and they would make and being a Rav anywhere in the Russian empire during the end of the Tsarist era was like a juggling act, because you had to satisfy the Russian government's requirements and also still be a Rav, and there was something called the Rav Mitam that was in many, many cities in Europe. Now, what was unique about Vilna is that Vilna had a Rav Mitam like everybody else, and when they had a vote for the Rav Mitam, there was someone by the name of Rav Chaim Chernovitz. He was called Rav Tzur. That's what they called him. That was the name of his. That was like his pen name. He wanted to be the Rav, and he had a yeshiva in Odessa, I believe, which was like a college yeshiva in Odessa. And the Rabbanim in Vilna were very, very dead set upon him not coming to Vilna and changing, Vilna, and they fought very strongly against him, and they pushed strongly to vote in a guy by the name of Rabbi Yitzchak Rubinstein, who would be like a Rav Mitam, but like a harmless Rav Mitam, to be the Rav of Vilna. He was a young man, Rabbi Yitzchak Rubinstein. He became the Rav of Vilna, I don't know exactly what year it is, but early, maybe beginning of the 1900s, became the Rav of Vilna. But Rav Chaim Ozer was really the Rav of Vilna, and he was just the Rav Mitam of Vilna. Now, during World War One, as the German army approached Vilna and was getting ready to conquer it, the Russian government decided, they did a policy. They wanted to make sure that the Jews who lived in all these cities that were going to fall to the Germans wouldn't be double agents who would favor the Germans. So what they did is they took hostages and sent them deep into the Russian Empire. And they said, if all the Jews of the town behave, you'll get back your hostages. And of course, on the top of the list of hostages were the senior Rabbanim of Lita at the time. And Rav Chaim Ozer was probably named number one at the top of the list. Now, Rav Chaim Ozer did not have any choice in the matter, but in 1916, the second summer of World War I, he was sent all the way deep into Russia to Yekaterinoslav, where I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's father was a Rav there. I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe was born there. It's possible. I don't think they were there at the same time, but he was sent deep into Ukraine, Yekaterinoslav, to be there. And Rav Chaim Oizer had to stay there for 3 years during the war, from 1916 all the way through 1919. He lived in Yekaterinoslav. Now, what happened in the interim was that this Rav Rubinstein stayed behind in Vilna and consolidated his power bit by bit. He was Taka Bal Chesed, I think. He did a lot for the people, the indigent people of Vilna at the time, but he consolidated his power so that by the time Rav Chaim Oizer was ready to come back in 1919, there was no one from the city, from the Anhala of the city, was inviting him back. And in the newspapers of the day, the Maskilik newspapers of the day, and those who hated the Rabbanim and hated Rav Chaim Oizer in particular, they wrote about him as follows. They said, a Rav who runs away in a time of war to save himself is not a Rav. A leader who doesn't stay with the ship, this was the alila, like the taina that they used against Rav Chaim Oizer. Now, I'll read you a description of a contemporary Rav Chaim Oizer writing this, and maybe it's an exaggeration, maybe it's not, maybe it is. He says, Kasher higia ha'es, she'ashkenazim hechelu latis me-Ukraina, v'cheva lita shnasa avara, v'seif ha'kayetz. When it came time at the end of the war for the Ashkenazim to come back, meaning the Litvaks to come back, v'hacha lichtav mechtavam l'Rasha Irenu. Rav Chaim Oizer started writing letters to the head of our city. She'shachenu le'ksav chasam b'dei menahale v'gabe Irenu. And he asked them to send them a document that says, we're waiting for you to come back, because the Russian law was that unless they were requesting your return, they wouldn't allow you to come back to the city. And he says, Lechavtzu harashim l'shleich le'ksav b'zeh. They wouldn't send them a letter. The township authorities, meaning the Jews, it was Jews, all Jews, some Zionists, some Fraya people, some Maskilim, a big mix of Inshidlim. Rav Chaim Oizer called them Sitra, the Smala, a big mix of these people, and they wouldn't even send him a letter to bring him back home until Rav Chaim Oizer had to sneak in as a guest on a visit and slowly reclaim Hishtela. Now, maybe it's an exaggeration, maybe it's not an exaggeration, but it just shows you the Chilul Hashem that it was, that Rav Chaim Oizer himself couldn't come back to Vilna, like had to sneak back into Vilna to get Hishtela back. Now, what's interesting to me, what caught my eye is that the taina that they used, like one of the methods that they employed when they wrote about him in their newspapers, in their way, was say that he ran away. Now, he didn't run away. He was forced, literally by force. The Russian government took hostages. He was literally a hostage. But in any case, that was the taina that they used. So I think it's a useful story to discuss the shaila of, is it taka a taina when someone runs away? Is it not a taina when someone runs away? Louis someone actually does run away. Is that the appropriate method to run away in time of war, in time of Hagefa? Is it not the appropriate method? Like, what's the proper way to look at it? So now I just want to open up with that tshuva from the Ramah that we closed with last time. The Ramah in Tshuva Chaf. The Ramah says as follows. The Ramah over there was talking about a shaila, about someone who wanted to rent out his home to another family, and then he found out that family is afflicted with a disease, and he wanted to get out of the contract. Now, the Ramah goes through, as we spoke last time, a long tshuva to describe that once a handshake agreement is reached, you can't just be chayzer, because you want to. And then in the end, he ends off with these sharp description. He says as follows. He says, Seif davar any roya klal sheyachal masker zel leimer adai tadachil eskarti. Okay. Af noidish is eshachal seish shel seich mikri yonis kol sheken shein define. Kimasha omer shuchelim is dabek. This was the line that we started with. He says this, that he says that this illness is a catchy illness. Kulei hevel. Umisha liboy noikvei emerkin. Somebody who has nervin says this. Ki Hashem yisalahu ha'moichitz v'haroife. He says Hashem is the moichetz, Hashem is the roif. Hashem decides who gets sick, who gets better, when they get sick, when they get better. And if this would be true, then there'd be no din of bikkur chaylim, because how do you visit anybody who's ill? And he continues on a little bit in this vein. So now the Ramah in this tshuva and tshuva chaf seems to say very strongly that illness, even catchy illness, shouldn't be treated like something that's catchy. Hashem decides if you'll get it. If it's not, like every bullet has a name. If it's not your time, if it's not your illness, you're not going to get it. You have nothing to worry about it. This is what the Ramah sounds like. Now the truth is, there's another Gemara, the Gemara in Sanhedrin, on Daf Chav Tes Amud Aleph, when the Gemara is discussing what we tell the Edim Zayim, what we tell Edim in order to scare them into line. Like we want to scare them straight. Edim come in, we want to do drishas v'chakiris, we want to scare them and tell them, like, be careful what you do, the stakes are very high. So the Gemara cycles through 5 or 6 different options of what we could tell them to scare them. And the Gemara gives us like the cynical response that the Edim will have to each one of them and why they won't be afraid of it. So the Gemara says as follows, why don't you tell them that they'll die in a plague? Why don't you tell them that they'll die from an illness? Like if you're going to be telling Eid Sheker, and this is a big Aveira, you'll die from an illness. Why don't you tell them that? So Amar Rav Ashi says, Yachli Lemeimar, they could answer back to you and say, Shev Shni Have Musna, 7 years they could be death. This is because of crop destruction. Ve'inish B'lei Shni Le Shachav. And a person who's not supposed to die will never die. And Rashi explains it, and this is an interesting thing, I've seen it quoted in this manner. Rashi explains it, that a person who has a parnasa, who's crafty, who knows how to get by, they could, the Edim, these potential Edim Zaymin could easily tell the Bezdin who's trying to scare them, a guy who knows what he's doing could live for 7 years through tough times and nothing's going to happen to him. Meaning, just because there's a Makas Medina, just because there's something going on that's bad, just because there's potential for something to happen, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be included in it and I'll be safe. That's what they could tell themselves. Now, there's another interesting raya to this that I think is interesting raya, is in the end of Shmuel, Beis, in Perek Chav Daled, David HaMelech does something wrong and he counts Klal Yisrael. Now, this is a famous story. The Gemara talks about it in a few different places. The Gemara in Brachas and the Samach Beis, the Gemara elsewhere discusses this story of David HaMelech. David HaMelech counts Klal Yisrael, which he's not allowed to do. Now, at the end of that, Hashem sends Gad Hanavi to tell David as follows: Haloich v'dibart el David, go talk to David. Koyamar Hashem, shalosh anochi noitel olecha, b'char lecha achas me'em ve'eselach. Hashem tells David HaMelech, I'm going to give you 3 choices. Choose one of them. You're going to get one of these anshim. Choose one of these 3 anshim, and whichever one you choose is the one you get. Vayavei Gadol David, vayagid loy, vayomer loy, hatav lecha sheva shanim rav. Would you prefer 7 years of hunger, ba'artzecha, im shloisha chadashim neisech lefnei tzarecha, or would you like 3 months of intense battle with your enemies, being chased by your enemies, or do you want 3 days of an epidemic, of death in your land? And God Hanavi tells David, you choose and let me know what I should tell Sholchai, who's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What should I tell the one who sent me? What do you want? So Vayomer David al God, this is a famous pasuk. David tells God, Tsar li ma'od nafla biyad Hashem, ki rabim rachma biyad adam al epla. David cycles through the options, and Chazal tell us how David got to this calculation. David says, I'd rather fall in the hand of Hashem, meaning plague. Just give me an epidemic, give me plague, give me Hashem's 3 days of death, and don't give me biyad adam al epla. Now, Rashi and other Rishonim, based on Chazal, explain this Gemara, is that David HaMelech was trying to choose the one that would be least likely to have corruption. If David HaMelech says, I choose seven years of hunger, it's not likely that anybody in David HaMelech's inner circle will be touched by that b'chlal. They're the rich people, they're the king, they're going to be fine. People are going to say, oh, David chose, let the nation be harmed, then I'll be fine. If David HaMelech chooses 3 months of battle, okay, David's heavily armed. He's the one with the nuclear weapons. He's not the one who's at risk. It's the infantry, the foot soldiers who are going to be at risk. But Rashi explains to us that if he chose plague, 3 days of plague is not mafchen between tzaddik and rasha. Plague goes to whoever, in whatever strata of society, whatever level. It doesn't matter if you're rich, you're poor, you're connected. Plague is the most equal opportunity killer from all these options. And David HaMelech, wanting to be totally clean of showing favoritism to himself or to his people, said, I choose plague. So now, this Gemara shows like an interesting component. I'm sorry, this psukim, they show an interesting component again, that plague is uncorruptible, al kapanim. Now, there's more than one way to learn this. You could say that Einam Avcham Mitzadik the Russian, it will affect him like anyone else, but really the pashastic way to learn the pasuk is that plague is incorruptible. Plague is Hashem. Hashem's in charge, like David HaMelech says, Epla biyad Hashem. And Hashem decides every individual, they have a din on Rosh Hashanah, when they're supposed to live, when they're supposed to die, and Hashem directs it to whoever it's supposed to go to, exactly when it's supposed to go to them and how it's supposed to go to them. And there's no makom for anything extra, anything different. That's what it seems like from the Psukim over here. Now, because of this, there's really a Gemara in Bava Kama that sounds like when a plague comes, a person's not supposed to run away. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, Tani Rav Yosef, it's on Samach Amud Aleph, and it continues into Samach Amud Beis in Bava Kama. It says, V'atam le'teitzu ish, mi-pesach be'isei ad baiker. And here the Gemara says a famous Yisayid, everybody knows this. Once the Satan has the ability to kill, he doesn't make distinctions anymore between tzaddik and rasha. He starts from the tzaddikim tchila. And then the Gemara continues on. It says as follows. It says, Tanar Rabbanan, Dever Be'ir. If there's an epidemic in the city, Kanes Raglcha, gather your feet in, meaning go inside. Shenemer va'atam le'seitu ish mi-pesach be'isei. Ad Baiker. The Pasuk tells us in 2 different places that when something's dangerous in the street, go inside, hide from it in the street. So Tashma, find the Gemara brings 3 psukim to prove the same point, and the Gemara elaborates why we need 3 psukim to prove the same point. Then the Gemara tells us a Maaseh Rav. It says, Rava, be'idon rischa, have a sacher kavi, he would close his windows. And Rashi explains, and other Rishonim explain this, Rava understood some sort of idea that pathogens come in from the outside, from the air, and Rava closed his windows. Now, I don't know, Rava probably didn't, there was no glass then, I don't think, Rava probably didn't have glass in the windows, whatever it means he closed his windows. Rava closed his windows. He went inside and he closed his windows. Now, l'chayru, what this Gemara sounds like is that when plague comes, when epidemic comes, you stay put. Why? Because if it's meant to get you, it's going to get you. If it's not supposed to get you, it won't get you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'moichetz hu ha'roifa, like the Ramah says, and there's no beating it. There's no reason to play games with it. Now, what's even more stark is that the Gemara makes a comparison, because the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, Rav Be'ir, if there's hunger, then pazer raglcha, then, run, get on the road. The Gemara brings a bunch of psukim for that also. Why? Because Rav, if you just cloister up and hide yourself inside your own home and you have nothing to eat, you're just going to die of hunger. Right? But if there's food elsewhere, so we follow what the Avis did, and you go run, go get on the road and try to find where the food is, right? Go where the jobs are, go where you could get a parnasa. That's what it sounds like in the Gemara. So if you look at this Gemara at face value, the Gemara sounds like it's saying dever, which is epidemics. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'moichetz hu ha'roifa. He decides. It doesn't help you to run. Fakir, it's like a lack of emunah to run. Stay put. Rav, okay, that makes sense because you have to go get food. Go run. That's what it sounds like from this Gemara. Now, most of the Gedolei Achronim that handle this Gemara do not learn the Gemara like that. And they learn the Gemara to mean that you're supposed to run. Now, I just want to show you how it's. I'll start with the Yam Shel Shlema, in Afanard, in the 6th parak of Baba Kama. The Yam Shel Shlema in Simcha Chavav, he says as follows: Tana Rabbanan Dever Be'er, he brings the whole Gemara, and then he says as follows: Bikan yesh roitzim ledaktik. After he brings the whole Gemara, he says, from here there are people. Doesn't say who they are. There are those who want to be medaktik. The bedever einam in pazer raglcha va'asul levrayach. That when there's an epidemic in town, we don't say pazer raglcha, and it's also for a person to run away. Bigam Kain asa mishum sakana. The hamrinan kanes raglcha v'ayhalach b'emtze drachim. Because we say walk only on the side of the roads. How are you going to run away? So he says there are those who want to be medayik from this Gemara that a person's not allowed to run during a time of plague. But he's about to change it, and he's going to say that's not true. But now I just want to go in order over here because really, essentially, what the Yam Shel Shlema is doing is he's like paraphrasing in his own words tshuva from the Maril, who predates him. A tshuva from the Maril, who's the Avim in Ashkenaz. I want to read the Maril a little bit, and then we'll move on to the Yam Shel Shlema's psak. Now, the earliest person to talk about it is the Sefer Chassidim. The Sefer Chassidim says as follows: Im yesh dever be'ir. If there's the Sefer Chassidim from the Rishonim, Im yesh dever be'ir. If there's an epidemic in the city, v'shama shebe'ir acheres toiv, and you heard through the grapevine that elsewhere it's better, lo yelchu sham, don't go there. Shekein malach hamavos yesh le rishos b'asher moitzi ba'aretz hahu. The malach hamavos has rishos for wherever he finds over there to kill them. Afilu zarim. And this is fascinating because they knew nothing about how disease were transferred in those days. He says when a caravan, large amounts of people go from one city that has a dever, that has an epidemic, to another city that doesn't, the city that they come to gets hit too. But if one or two individuals at a time sneak out and go to a different city, then nothing happens. So the Sefer Chassidim gives you advice. He says when large amounts of people go from one city that is already infected to another city that isn't infected, it ends up the infection goes there too. Now he doesn't say because it travels with them, whatever. He just says the infection goes there too. But when one or two individuals sneak out and they go and hide themselves somewhere in the countryside, that's a good way, and that's what you should do to save yourself. So that's how the Sefer Chassidim starts. So now the Maril, who's going to quote the Sefer Chassidim, he says as follows. He says like this: Mar. Well, this that you wrote, the Nirishu Asul Levrayach, the Parak Zebar, this that you were Medayik, this is the Shayil, it's Reb Levoy, Reb Leon, it's a common name. I don't know who it is. It's a very common name in Chuvas Avir. Some say, on the footnote over here, they say that it's Reb Levoy Landa, the Avibal HaAgur, the father of the Agur. I don't know enough about this. But anyhow, he says, Ma'ad Kasamar, this that you wanted to be Medayik, the Nirishu Asul Levrayach, that it seems like it's not allowed to run away during the time of an epidemic. Miparik Zebar from the Gemara in Sanhedrin that we quoted before in the Chavtas that says, Shev Shni have musnav inish blazim le'shachiv. 7 years there could be hunger, there could be pestilence, and a person who's not supposed to won't die. Mashmak Saste in Levrayach. Amram Nira the Eina El Mashal Ba'alma, Damri Inchi. That's what the Gemara in Sanhedrin was saying. The response that the Edom would have is just a Mashal Ba'alma. The Parakama the Chagiga Amrinon, the Yesh Nispa B'lei Mishpat. Because the Gemara in Chagiga tells us clearly there are people who are killed when it's not their proper time. Which we'll read that in a second. Alma the Toy, you see it's possible. And also the Sefer Chassidim says it's good to run away. The time Rabbi Eka. The Zimnin Nigzer al Ir Achas and Medina Achas. Sometimes the way the Gzeira came down from Shemayim is the city or the location. Like a little like the famous Menachem's Kolman Deboy. Like the Gzeira came a little open-ended. It went to a locale, to a location. It didn't go to an individual. And it brings many psukim. Says, this is what I heard the minig is in Eretz Lombardy in Italy. So the Maril brings a whole bunch of riots that a person is not supposed to put himself in danger. This is the custom, a person should run away. This is the Gemara Bava Kama sounds not like this. It says, Knois Ragelcha v'Yalef Mikroi Tuva Shemati Mipia Rav Shalom Shachna. I heard in the name of Shalom Shachna. Here he says a big chilik. He says once the plague started and it got strong, once the plague is already in full steam and it's already doing what it's doing and it's killing people, then you stay put, you hide yourself in your house. Because it's really dangerous to go out on the street. At the first whispers and hints of a plague, it's best to run. So the Maril makes some sort of pshara, and he says this that the Gemara sounds like Gemara Bava they're not supposed to run. That's talking about when the plague is already, in full bloom. It's knocking. But before the plague is really starting, when it's just getting started a little bit, then if you have the opportunity, you should run away. And this is the Maril's calculus of how to deal with the Gemara. Now, interestingly, is the Marsha, who's after all these chuvas that we're going to say, Marsha on Afanar in the Gemara Bava Kama Daf Samach, he says, the Gemara says, when there's dever kanes ragelcha, bring your feet in, says the Marsha, if it's not shaykh for you to run away, then go inside and close the door so at least you're not exposed to the danger. So the Marsha is he's really coming after all this. He's post all these chuvas that we're about to show. And he's now the Am Shlemus has a little bit of a longer because really all he's doing is restructuring the Maril and just adding a few points and includes along the way. But I just want to show first this Gemara in Chagiga that the Maril mentioned, because it's really, you say this to Gemara in the whole Hashkafa Shai over here. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says, it's one of the strangest Gemaras. The Gemara in Daf Daled and Beis Chagiga, it says like this. Kihad Rav Bibi bar Abaya. Like this story, this tale with Rav Bibi bar Abaya, he was close friends with the Malach HaMavas. Amalei L'shluchei, Malach HaMavas was once sitting and schmoozing with Rav Bibi bar Abaya, and Rav Bibi bar Abaya overheard a conversation. The Malach HaMavas told his assistant, his deputy, Zil Aisili Miriam Megadla Seir Neshaya, go collect for me, i.e. kill Miriam, the one who does the women's hair. Miriam, the hairdresser. Azul, he went, Aisili Miriam Megadla Dardiki. And he brought him Mora Miriam instead. He brought a babysitter instead. This is what the assistant gave him. Amalei, I know Miriam Megadla Seir Neshaya Amriloch. He says, what are you doing here with a babysitter? I asked you for a hairdresser. You got the wrong one. Amalei, Ihachi, so fine, Ahadra. So let me give her back. I'll bring her back. I'll give her back to life. Amalei no ha'il now you brought her already, that's it. So then, but Rabbi Barabaya or the Malach HaMavas himself speaks this out. So how are you able to get there if it wasn't her time? Meaning, right, a person only dies when it's their time to die. How are you able to get there? Have a Nikita Mitara biyada. She was holding a heating iron in her hand. Have a Kashraga umachra tanura, and she was stoking the fire with it. Shaklase v'anchase agava dekara, and she by mistake placed it on her thigh. Kadcha, she burned herself. Isra mazla, her mazel was gechaped with. I see when I was able to get her. Amalei Rabbi Barabaya. Rabbi Barabaya says, "Islachu reshus lemevet hachi." Rabbi Barabaya, who's witnessing this conversation, he's incredulous. He says, "You, Mr. Malach HaMavas, you have the right to make mistakes like this and to just take whoever comes." Amalei v'loik siv yeshnis b'lei mishpat. Does it not say in the pasuk there are people who are killed without mishpat? Amalei, so Rabbi Barabaya says, "V'ksiv dar hoylech v'dar ba." Does it not say that there's a set time? Dar hoylech dar ba. Hashem gives a time for it. Amar darina le'ana ad malu le'ledara v'havim. I'm sorry, darina le'ana. He says, yeah, I collect the spare years, I hold them in like a holding pen until it's time for the generation to go, and then I give them with the rest of the generation to Dura, who's in charge of the depths. What do you do with the years? There's extra years. Hashem designated 70 years, so when you took her 35, what do you do with the years? If there's a Talmud Chacham who's Ma'aver b'Midaisav, I give him these extra years. And he lives instead of that person. And then the Gemara goes on. So this is the Gemara Chagiga, the very, very strange Gemara. Ad kedei kach that the Rabbeinu Chananel, after the Gemara over here, Rabbeinu Chananel says, "V'yesh misha omer ke'ein chaloim ra dvarim halalu." Rabbeinu Chananel says that there are those who say that Rabbi Barabaya saw this ke'ein chaloim. Now, the truth is that it doesn't really matter to us if he saw it as a chaloim or he saw this as an actual conversation, because either way, the Gemara chose to record it and bring it down to teach us something. It means to teach us this lesson, that there is this concept of not everything being straight down the line, not just being every bullet has a name. Meaning, whether or not it's an actual story that happened or it's a chalaim, it's here to teach us the takeaway. So the takeaway is the takeaway. And from this, the Maril extrapolated. Advice is not so simple, and there is makom to say to run. Now, every bullet has a name, and every person has a set amount of time, and Rosh Hashanah, Hashem is Pesach, Chaim, and Mesim, so we have to see what to do with that. Now, I just want to sample the Yam Shlomo's tshuva quickly. Yam Shlomo in Yam Shlomo in the 6th parak of Bava Kama and Simcha Chavav, so he brings a lot of these same things. He's just moistif a few different nekudas that I just want to highlight. He says he brings all those rayas that a person could die, and he says therefore it's roy to run away at the time of plague. The pamachas sometimes the snigs around a city, Medina Achas, and fine, someone who goes out will be saved. All types of piranias, war, plague, hunger. A person should run away. If he has the now stam, okay, this is stam. I'm skip that for a second. He brings and we've seen gedolim who ran and hid in other places. Now this is as long. I could give you. I had a country on the Sefer at home. I give you 100 examples of different gedolim who ran away. So this is very long-standing tradition that he says. Sounds like you're not supposed to run away. Like the Meril says, that's once it started and the Malach Mavis has full control. Now here the Marshal adds something so true. He says, Befrat, once the dever started already, the Goyim blamed the Jews for it, which was the lived experience of everyone who lived in the 13 and 1400s. Marshal knows this because Jews know this always. They blame the Jews. Says, and the danger of the non-Jews who blame the Yidden for the epidemic is even more strong than the epidemic itself, which is true. Everyone knows that the killing that happens after is worse than the epidemic itself. In the beginning, Tov Levrayach, says the Marshal. Ravad lebarach. The Gemara tells us Ma'aser Rav. Rava didn't run away. Rava didn't have the ability. Fine. This is what he says. In Bad Devalier, this is his final punchline. If Dever comes to the city, mechuyev levrayach. If a plague comes, you mechuyev to run away. If you can't. Unless you're already inoculated, you already got it, and you were healed. Again, they know some sort of vague idea that you could develop antibodies. The Veld says that once you got it already, there's no chash. This is what the Marshal, almost 500 years ago, is writing this. They say if you got it already, it's not a concern anymore. So, in any case, the Marshal has a strong psak. He layers in a few additional nakudis that the Meril doesn't have, and he says that he's supposed to run away. Now, the truth is that the Ramah himself, who we quoted in Tshuva Chaf, who says, Ani Hashem zamech, hu amoichet hu aroife, who sound like you shouldn't run away, the Ramah himself, in Darkei Moshe and Simon Kuf Tesvav, and in Shulchan Aruch and Simon Kuf Tesvav in Yeridea, Ramah passes that a person should run away. He says, I'll read you the short version in Shulchan Aruch and Kuf Tezayin. Kuf Tezayin Sefei. He says, V'chein yizar michol advar mevil le'tzakana, ki sakanta chamir meisura. Oid kasvu, he says, sheyesh levreach min hadet min ha'ir, ki shedever be'ir. A person should run for the city when there's dever in the city. V'yesh latzis min ha'ir b'tchilas hadever. Go out in the beginning, incorporating the Marshal and the Maril's tshuva. V'lei b'seifei. V'chol eil advar mihim mishum sakana. V'shem nafshi yirchik mihem ki yotz b'zeh. And a person should, Shem nafshi should watch himself from this. Now the truth is that the Ramah in the Darkei Moshe, in the Siman, is a little bit more ma'irich. And over there he brings that the minig is to run away, and minig aviseinu Torah is what he says. Minig aviseinu Torah. Now Hagam the Ramah is like the Baal HaMinig. The Ramah brings the minhagim also only 2 times in all of the Ramah's minig bringing throughout Shulchan Aruch, Darkei Moshe, Ramah and Shulchan Aruch and etc. The Ramah use those words. Minig aviseinu Torah. So it's a big, you have to know what that means. Maybe it means there is no real makar for it, or I don't really love the makar, but afal pikein, meaning because we're getting mixed messages in the Ramah. And the truth is the Ramah has a tshuva and tshuva nun, where over there he has another where he sounds like his tshuva and tshuva chaf. So the Ramah is like a little bit mixed messages. He is paskening that a person should run away, but he's saying it's like begeder a minig, like nago avseinu minig avseinu biyadenu. Like that's the you say the dvarim. Now there is a lange tshuva from the Rashbash. I think we're out of time. We'll have to continue possibly, but handling really the way we framed this in the beginning is that it's a hashkafa question, right? Meaning like how do you know what's the right? How do you look? What's the right thing? Could it happen to anybody? Or things like how do you go about that? How do you look at like a person's ears? And the Rashbash, who's the son of the Tashbitz, an early tshuva, close to 600 years ago, in tshuva Kuf Tzadikei, has a whole arichos to be masber this. I think we're gonna have to leave it. We'll maybe continue with it, maybe we won't. To be continued, we'll see.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.